song.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Landis. I'm an alcoholic. Nicole, thank you for picking us up at the airport, being a wonderful host to both Eileen and myself. I want to thank my beautiful wife, Eileen, for traveling with me. I wanted to get that right out of the way because I have forgotten in the past, haven't I? But enough about you. Anyway. I want to thank the Stateline Committee for the kind invitation to come to Stateline and participate in this magnificent event. I want to thank all the other speakers for carrying the message to everyone, including myself. I've been sober since September 16th, 1991. I've been a student of the Big Book that entire time. I've been a victim and a recipient of strong sponsorship. I've had an active home group that entire time. But in spite of all those facts in my life, I know something more than the fact that I'm standing here today, which is this. I cannot carry the message to myself. And if I could, I guess I'd be home in Bellingham, Washington, carrying the message to myself. So thank you to all the other speakers that did such a magnificent job of firing us up and making us enthusiastic, because there's things without my permission that happen, good and bad, in Alcoholics Anonymous as you're in this process. And one of the things that's bad that happens to me without my permission is things go to sleep within me. As I'm going to meetings, as I'm sponsoring people, as I'm active in the service structure that I don't even know have slumbered. But then I come here and I hear a message and I hear somebody say it in their words, and it hits my mind and it awakens something in me that maybe I forgot. You see, I want to be a better AA member after I leave Stateline, and what a wonderful thing to be able to say that. Because I walk in here and my side of the street's clean. I feel good about my membership in Alcoholics Anonymous. But in spite of that, I get fired up when I leave here. Because this is a wonderful event and we're having so much fun this weekend. But I know I'm going to be going home and I'm going to go to that home group, and I know I'm going to bring this event with me. I'm going to bring all of you with me. I'm going to bring the speakers with me. And they're going to notice it in my home group. They won't have to ask me, how was Vegas? They're going to know. They're going to see the bounce of my step and the glint in my eye. They're going to go, oh, and the guys I sponsor are going to be like, oh no, he's fired up. Oh God, I know what this means. Oh God. Oh, God, we might as well just start writing now. Just start writing. Oh, we're going to study the concepts again. I just know it. I just know it. So you just don't do it to me. You do it to them. So feel good about yourselves. And I have the honor and privilege of talking about our 12th suggestion, our 12th principle, our 12th step. Having had a spiritual awakening, as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all our affairs. And you know, I've heard arguments in Alcoholics Anonymous in discussion meetings where people go, well, what are our principles? And we struggle with what's honesty? And that's a good one. I know, I've heard of that one. And Bill, you know, when he wrote, he put it real clearly, that our 12 steps are principles, spiritual in nature. When we talk about practicing these principles in all our affairs, we're talking about practicing the steps and the information and spiritual guidance contained in each and every step in all areas of our life. It's not any more complicated than that. And that gives me a lot of hope, and it makes it simpler for a guy like me. So when I go to my sponsor and I think I have a work problem, he can say to me, it sounds like you have a second step problem. And what if that turns out to be true? What if all the things I've taken my labeling gun over the years and I've fired things on, good, bad, happy, sad, things I've labeled as problems, what if in the end everything turns out to be nothing more than a spiritual dilemma? Now the good news about that, if everything in my life that I identify as a problem really is only a spiritual dilemma, then every answer I have is spiritual in nature. And every answer I have begins and ends with the word God. And for a complicated man who's not as bright as I think I am, it's so important that my answer is simple. Because the more complicated my answer is, the more difficult I'm going to have out there in the real world, where my life is lived, where you're not there supporting me, holding my hand, where it's me and God trying to go out there and sort out this thing called life. So I'm delighted to be here at Stateline. I want to tell you I'm a real alcoholic. I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a social drinker. I've seen social drinking, don't understand it. 28 years sober, still confuses me. My favorite story about social drinking involves my wife, which is why I like to tell it. When I met Eileen and fell head over heels in love with her, and we got engaged, and my older sister, Patricia, who plays a vital role in my story, finally met Eileen. She pulled me aside almost immediately and said, if you screw this up, I'll kill you. And they threw us a big engagement party, and there was some social drinking going on at the engagement party. Not real drinking, not crash your car, go to jail drinking, social, white wine drinking, and we're in the kitchen with my sister, and, we've got our club soda, and Pat's got her little glass of white wine. She's a social drinker. And at one point, she saw some people arrive at the party and said, oh, I'm going to go say hi to these folks. I'll be right back. And she set her wine down, and she left the room. Well, Eileen noticed this. And she looked at Pat's wine, and she looked at Pat walking away, and she looked at Pat's wine, and she looked at Pat getting further away. And with a little bit of panic in her voice, she said, Pat left her wine. And I said, yeah, she did. She goes, well, should I go tell her? And I said, baby, at this particular moment, she's not suffering from separation anxiety. She's not one of us. And I fell in love with the effect produced by alcohol when I was about 17 years old. I had the early part of my drinking, which was the free drinking. No, I'm picking up a tab. I'm not, standing in courtrooms trying to explain my latest event of outrageous behavior. I'm not standing in front of my mother while she's crying her eyes out going, don't you know you're killing yourself? I don't have girlfriends hiding in closets because they're afraid they're going to get smacked around in my latest drunken rage. I mean, when I was 20, 21, 22, 23, you could take all those things and label them yet to be added to my story. I was having a very good time with the drink. I love the effect produced by alcohol. And if God Almighty had come into a bar and sat down next to me and said, Don, the next drink, the next one, it's going to pass you into a region where there's no return through human aid. You're going to have to go to AA for the rest of your life or die a horrible alcoholic death. I told God Almighty, you got the wrong guy. Because it's working for me. And you remember when it worked from the inside out, from our toes to our head. It let us be anything we wanted to be, not feel anything we didn't want to feel. It's freedom in a bottle. Why wouldn't you do that? You see, I'm not a guy that drinks and wonders why I drink the way I drink and do the things I do. I accept the consequences of the actions I take when I drink. It's a small price to pay to stop the madness that lives in my head in a sober state. And when I'm out there doing it, I don't have the vocabulary to explain it. I just know I feel significantly better when I'm drunk. And I don't understand people that don't drink the way that I drink. I don't have any use for those guys. The guys that look at their watch and go, God, it's getting late. I have to work tomorrow, and go home. I got no use for you. I've always been willing to ruin tomorrow for a couple of more hours of fun tonight. That's the way I drink. And I pick the people that drink that way to hang out with. I love the effect produced by alcohol. But alcoholism is the great eraser. Alcoholism is an insatiable appetite for destruction. And it takes everything that I have. It takes my future. It takes my health. It takes my intellect. It takes my future. It takes my potential. And when it takes everything it can possibly take from me, and I'm left a dried out husk of a man, it starts taking away my family and sucking the life from them. Alcoholism, the family disease, it's not enough to destroy me. It's not enough to take away my future. It's not enough to take away my health. You're going to take away my mom's peace of mind. You're going to take away my sister's love for me. You're going to take away the future and the promise of the people that were counting on me to be in their life. I believe that God assigns every one of us a role, and there's no mistakes in God's plan. God set me right where he wanted me to be in a family that I was supposed to be in, and I failed miserably playing the role I was supposed to play. And alcoholism took a large bite out of anyone that had the misfortune of caring about me. And as I go down the line, I got to tell you, if you're going to be a real alcoholic, if you're going to go to the finish line with your alcoholism, you can't let a little thing like looking bad slow you down. I mean, and the thing about my alcoholism is it'll keep pace with the consequences that come into my life as a result of the way I drink. And alcoholism gave me the two best friends that drink and drunk has ever had: justification and rationalization. And we all want to know what those are, and this is what it looks like in my life. I got to be able to go to jail, and when I get out of jail, to face the people that love me the most and want the best things in the world for me, I have to be able to look them in the eye and jokingly say, well, everybody goes to jail once in a while. No, they don't. It's shocking. I've been sober a long time. I have met hundreds of people that have never been to jail. But my alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Here, let's play a game, just for giggles. How many people in this room have been handcuffed? Oh my God. It's worse than I thought. I need to explain something to you. You don't get that at Rotary, all right? But around here, it's just, we think it's normal, right? I ask that question, people turn to each other and go, why would you ask a silly question like that? Well, of course I've been handcuffed several times, we say with pride. I'm delighted to talk on step 12. And I've been giving this a lot of thought. And I think about it often, not just before Stateline. Because you see, I'm a direct product of the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, I'm a direct product of somebody else's spiritual awakening, not my own. Without the spiritual awakening of these other men, I wouldn't be here tonight. And I need to remember that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I walked into the Simi Valley Alano Club on September 16, 1991, at age 31, more dead than alive, with all the hope gone and no safe direction in sight, that there were big books laid out on tables. And there was coffee made, and there was a literature display. And there were sober men and women at their posts, if you will. And I took advantage of all of it. And that's exactly what I was supposed to do as the new man, because that's why they set it up, for the new man or the new woman. But I'm not new anymore. And I understand something today to my core that I didn't know for years into my sobriety, that a lot of men and women had to go to a lot of meetings that perhaps they didn't want to go to that night. They had to take a lot of commitments that were inconvenient for them, that probably they thought they had something better to do. That they were willing to give people rides and stay sober and do step work and have their own spiritual awakening. So the apparatus, the machine, the spiritual entity that is Alcoholics Anonymous was up and running the day I had my opportunity to recover. And this beautiful thing that's Alcoholics Anonymous was there for me. And because of that, I owe. I owe no more or no less than what those men did for me. I need to provide my link in the chain, because we need everyone. You see, I think God runs Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think that everybody that comes to AA has a role to play. And I think when we play that role, we're magnificent as an organization, and we're strong. But I think when one of us doesn't play that role, we're just a little bit weaker, aren't we? And I'm so grateful to the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous that had their spiritual awakening, that did their step work, that had their hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others, so they knew what to do when a suffering drunk came in, powerless and dying. So thank you for that, Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't mean to end up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not a guy that should have ended up here. I'm the guy with a lot of potential. I'm the guy with good grades. I'm the graduating class athlete in my high school. I'm the guy that's going to do something with his life. But I'm also the guy that took a drink and fell in love with the effect produced by alcohol. And very quickly, everything else started to lose priority for me. And by the time I'm 25 years old, I'm pulling geographics from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I'm living in Boston until I find out they drink in Boston. And then I'm leaving Boston, and I come back to Los Angeles after 3 years, and I'm an alcoholic, and we're remarkable people. We are like cats flung outside a second-story window. And we'll land on our feet, boom, in a three-piece suit at a job interview. And we'll get the job. Oh, we can get the job, get the girl, get the money. We just can't keep any of it. We are tremendous getters, poor keepers, you know. And I get this great job at age 28, and by 29, 30, you know, I blow through that job, you know, and I end up with nowhere to go. And where do you go? Where do the tough go when they've got nowhere else to go? You go home. And I call up my sister and I tell her I got nowhere to go. And she says, you can come to my house, but you know the rules. If you drink, you're out of my house. And I told my beautiful sister, Patricia, I won't drink, I promise. And I drank every day in that house for 6 months until I made it to AA. And if you don't know how you do that when they're watching you, maybe you're not a sneaky rat like I am. Because I got no problem drinking around your schedule. I'm unemployed. What time do you go to work in the morning? 7 a.m., bars open. And this is the end of my drinking. This isn't I'm drinking to kid myself I'm better looking or tougher than I really am. This is oblivion drinking, light switch drinking. This is get the whiskey on board hard enough and fast enough to shut off the head so you can go into a blackout. So you can come to in a room you're mooching off of your family to face the hideous four horsemen. Terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair, sitting on the end of the bed, talking to me in my voice in my head, asking those questions, making those statements. Who are you going to hurt today? Who are you going to rip off today? God, you've taken every good thing that's ever come your way and you've torn it to shreds, and now you're ripping your family off. How's it going to end for you, Don? How's it going to end? And I don't know what you do with a hangover head in the morning like that, but I just took another pull off the jug, and I had surrendered. I want to be very clear. I was in full surrender to alcoholism, and it's not the surrender we ask you to make when you're new in AA. It's the alcoholic surrender of a man that's too tired and too beat up to do battle anymore. I'd been fighting the drink for 5 or 6 years on my own, and I'd been getting slaughtered. I knew I was never going to get sober, so why even try? And you make your life smaller, and you stop driving, and you stop working, and you stop returning phone calls, and you stop dating, and you just want to be left alone. Leave me alone and let me drink. Just leave me alone and let me drink, and then your dream comes true, and you're left alone, and they let you drink, and you die of the loneliness and the alcoholism. And I thought it was going to go down that way. I got an unemployment check from the state of California a few days before I got sober, and I rolled up on my brother-in-law, Larry, and I said, Larry, I got my unemployment check. Can I borrow your car? Larry asked me a funny question. He said, Don, will you be coming back this time? Fair question. I'd borrowed his car a few times and gone out on little alcoholic vacations. We know what those are. But the 12 and 12 explains to me that my outstanding characteristic is defiance. And when Larry said that, I got right in his face. And I said, Larry, how dare you? You know, the last time this happened, Larry, I apologized. I opened my heart to you, Larry. I don't need this crap. And Larry, untreated Al-Anon that he was, felt terrible and took his keys out. And I snatched the car keys from this man I'm mooching a room off of to walk out of his house to get in his car. And I remember thinking, there better be gas in it. I went to the liquor store to cash my unemployment check, because that's where drunks like me cash their unemployment checks. And I have what our book refers to as the thought that precedes the first drink. And it's always the same for me. What's in a half pint of whiskey? Nobody ever went to jail behind a half pint of whiskey. So I got the half pint and I drank it. It went well, so I drank another half pint. And I thought I can go visit those friends in the valley. I'll be back in 45 minutes. They won't even miss me, and I am gone. 3 days later, I'm driving up the hill to face that family I've torn apart one more time. I've taken their hope, their faith, their trust, and I've just shredded it. And you need to understand, driving up the hill to see them, I love them no less than this very moment. And I love my family tremendously. But I can't serve two masters. I only got time to serve one. And that's King Alcohol. You get between me and a drink, it's nothing personal. It's almost business-like. I'm getting to the drink. I'm going around you or through you, manipulating you, but I'm getting to the drink. But when you don't understand what you suffer from, you can't warn people. You can't say, listen, do you think I want to live this way? Do you think I want to treat you this way? Do you think I want to do these things? Don't you understand I have a front row seat for the destruction of my life? But here's the worst part of everything I just said. It's going to happen again. I'm going to look you in the eye with tears in my eyes, and I'm going to say, I'm sorry. You're going to believe it, because you know what? It's the truth. But that truth won't keep me from doing it again, and I'm going to hurt you again and again and again. You got to get away from me. You got to save yourself, because I'm poison. But I don't know anything about alcoholism, so I can't warn you. So what do? I say things like this. I'm sorry. How woefully inadequate the statement I have to make to my family as I roar through their life year after year after year. I'm so sorry. But it's all I got. And it's the truth, because I never wanted to live this way. I never wanted to treat you this way. And my family and I are in a lot of trouble. And it's worse than we even imagined. I walked into a house that was devastated by the disease of alcoholism to find out that in my absence, as usual, an argument broke out between my brother-in-law and my sister. He wanted to report the car stolen. She negotiated him down to a missing persons report. They saw me pull up and they called the cops. Now the cops are on their way up to do the follow-up investigation. Now, I don't know if you've ever been up for 3 days drinking, but the police usually aren't who you want to talk to. I got warrants for my arrest in 2 counties because I'm an overachiever, and I start screaming at my sister, I got warrants, I'm going to jail. Thanks for nothing, because now it's her fault. I go outside to wait for the police because I don't want the interview to go on in front of the family. I don't know what I'm going to be saying, but I'm fairly certain I'll be lying. And as I'm out there, the black and white rolls up, and on the side of the black and white it says Canine Unit. And I think, oh good, they brought the dog. Like I'm in any shape to make a run for it. And the cop got out and started doing what those cops do, those trained professionals. They start asking you those tough questions, don't they? Like, where were you? And everything I remember is illegal, so I'm lying. I'm making up a story. He's not buying it. He's looking at my eyes really hard. I don't like that, so I'm breaking his gaze. He's breaking with me, so now we're interviewing and dancing. I see the dog in the back seat. I just want to divert his attention. I point at the dog and I say, so is that your partner? And he says, well, yes, it is. Walks over, opens the door, and this dog gets out. German Shepherd, not a hair out of place. Like a Rin Tin Tin reincarnate. And with no prompting on my part, he started to relay facts to me about the dog's life. The dog's past mandatory retirement. They haven't retired him. He's just too damn good. The dog's participated in more arrests than any dog in the history of Ventura County. The dog has participated in more arrests and rescues than any dog in the history of Ventura or Los Angeles County. This dog was so phenomenal that the officers took a collection out of pocket to send him over to Europe for international competition where he kicked butt on German Shepherds. Right? So I said to the officer, I go, well, that's a phenomenal dog you have there, sir. And this thought flew in the back of my mind. The minute I thought it, I knew it was the truth. I wanted to deny it, but I knew it was the truth. That this dog had done significantly more with his life than I'd done with mine. I hated that dog. I finish up with the cop. I don't go to jail. I catch a break, as I always do, always do. I walk into a house that's been devastated by the disease of alcoholism to find out they want me gone. And they had every right to want me gone, but I'm an alcoholic and I'm not too proud to beg, and I begged for another chance. I turned on the waterworks and, oh my God, I got nowhere to go. Don't you know I'll die out there? You got to give me a couple of days. Please, please, please. I'll do anything, please. I'll go to AA and everything. No idea why I said that. Looking back, it feels like an over-demonstration, doesn't it? You know? And then my family didn't believe I was going to go to AA. I mean, my first week in Alcoholics Anonymous, my sister took me to AA and picked me up from AA. You know how it makes you feel when you look the way I look and you get in your older sister's compact car at the end of an evening of Alcoholics Anonymous. She's driving her 31-year-old loser brother back to her house. So, Donald, what'd you learn in AA tonight? You know? I don't remember my first night in Alcoholics Anonymous. They assure me I was there and somewhat entertaining, but I do remember my second night, most important night of my life. And the first thing you need to know about my second night in Alcoholics Anonymous is I did not look the way I looked this morning. I got long hairs down to the middle of my back, and it's filthy because I've stopped showering. I got a full beard with food stuck in it. I've lost the ability to speak the King's English. I communicate in a series of hand gestures, grunts, and clicks. I'm wearing my sunglasses at night. I got my back against the wall between the 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock meeting at the Simi Valley Alano Club. Got my arms thrown across my chest like this, and I'm surveying the room, and I'm just rocking back and forth, and I'm not doing this because I'm a tough guy. I'm doing this because every molecule in my body is screaming in unison, let's go get a drink, because I'm coming up on 48 hours without a drink of alcohol, and I'm physically addicted. And my head starts talking to me, look at them, Don, look at them. They're all clean and they're happy, and no one's coming up and talking to you. You know why, Don? Because they don't want you here. And you know what? You're quitting drinking, Don? Oh, isn't that cute? How many times we played this game? 100? And what do you always do? You take the pain, you take the pain, you take the pain, and then what do? You drink anyway. Here's an idea for you, Scooter. Let's get out of this joint. Let's go get a drink. Let's bypass the pain. Let's go now. Let's go get a drink. What are we doing? Let's go get a drink. And I'm leaving Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm not leaving Alcoholics Anonymous because it doesn't work, and I'm not leaving AA because God isn't true, and I'm not leaving AA because the steps don't work. Well, I'm leaving AA because I don't have the human power to overcome an obsession of the mind greater than that human power has. And I got to go. And it's the most important moment of my life. And I caught a break. Because over in the corner were two good members of Alcoholics Anonymous named Lou and Mark. And it is the most important moment of my life. Whether I live or die is going to be decided in the next few minutes. But for Lou and Mark, it was Tuesday. And Lou and Mark were where they were every Tuesday, hanging out at the Simi Valley Alano Club between the 6 o'clock and the 8 o'clock meeting, drinking that bad coffee, telling those war stories, telling those off-color jokes with their eyes trained on the room and their eyes trained on the door. And they were there every night looking for men to 12-step. And the way they tell the story is they saw me. And Lou looked at Mark and said, "Whoa." And Mark looked at Lou and went, "Yeah." And then Lou said, "I bet we can't get him sober." And Mark said, "Well, we are here anyway." And then they took an action that I've come to believe is the most important action we will ever take in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Two good members of Alcoholics Anonymous took a 30-foot journey across the clubhouse to cordially welcome a man to Alcoholics Anonymous who was dying from the disease of alcoholism. "Hi, my name is Lou. This is Mark. We don't think we've met you. Why don't you come sit with us?" It sounds like such a niceness, such a politeness. Why do I think it's so important? 30 feet for Lou and Mark. For me, it's 1,000,000 miles. Don't you know where I've been, who I've hurt, what I've done? Don't you understand? I can't get my eyes off of my shoes, and you expect me to go shake hands? Are you insane? Do you understand I have nothing left in the tank? I'm on my last gasp. If there's any solution that's going to happen in my life, I'm going to have very little to do with it. And Mark and Lou understood the terms of engagement for recovery from alcoholism, that they would have to carry the message to the alcoholic that still suffers. My only responsibility is to receive it. They sat me down at a table and they got me a half a cup of coffee, and Mark sat with me, and Lou continued to stand, and he clapped me right in the middle of my back, and he said, "Don, this is Mark. He'll be your sponsor." And then he walked away. And they assigned me my first sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll tell you, I know that's not done many places, but in my case, it's a good idea. Because I'll tell you what, I'd have never picked the weenie boy they assigned to me, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have known good sponsorship if it fell out of the sky and hit me. Because we say things at Alcoholics Anonymous, we say them like they're in the big book, and they ain't. We've been saying them to each other for generations, and we just think it's true. What do we say to the new man or woman? Find somebody that has what you want. Huh. I wonder what I want my second night of recovery. Oh, I don't know, maybe a pharmaceutical rep with a spare Cadillac? Hey, it's a start. And I sat with this man at a table, and without my permission, I might add, he grabbed a meeting directory, and like it was the most normal thing in the world, he started circling meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, showing me the meetings, and I knew that because he went, "Oh, these are the meetings you'll be going to in Alcoholics Anonymous." And as he's circling, I remember thinking, that's a lot of circling. And he's talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's talking about, in that thing, I hear this in AA too. I don't talk to the new man or the new woman about God till they get their feet underneath them. I don't want to scare them away. He didn't get that memo, because first meeting, he's talking about what God did for him, what God did for her, what God did for them, what God was going to do for me. He's telling me I'm one of the lucky ones. Isn't that something? I'm at the low point of my existence, sitting in my wardrobe, dying from alcoholism, and this guy looks me right in the eye and says, you're one of the lucky ones. They're out there on the streets tonight, Don, and they are dying, and a lot of them will never see anything like the inside of a room of an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But you made it. You're here. You're with us now. Everything's going to be great. And I don't know why. I just met this man. But there's something about that spiritual enthusiasm. There's something about that conviction. There's something about a man that has sufficiently armed with facts about himself, that has this solution in place that can cut through the fear, cut through the paranoia, cut through the hopelessness, and somehow left me feeling like there's something here that he knows that I don't know. And it bought me a couple of minutes. It kept my rear end in the chair as he started to tell me about these meetings I'd be going to. And as he's circling the meetings and talking to AA, at one point he stopped, he went, "Are you working?" I said, "No, I'm currently unemployed." More circling, more circling, more circling. And here's the funny thing about AA and sponsorship, right? If you're out there in the real world and you happen to be unemployed and you run into somebody and they go, "Oh, so what do you do for a living?" "Well, I'm currently unemployed." They'll be embarrassed. They'll go, "Oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. I'm sure you'll find work soon." And they want to get away from you as soon as possible. When my first sponsor heard I was unemployed, you know what he said? "Oh, that's great." Why is that great? Because in AA, the worse you are, the better we like it. Everything he found out about me, he got more excited. "You got warrants? That's beautiful." "You don't have a car?" "Of course you don't." "Oh, you live with your sister? Why wouldn't you?" "Oh, you're hopelessly in debt? You're going to be speaking at Stateline one day, you know." He was so excited for the destruction of my life, I couldn't figure it out. The things that are keeping me up at the night, the things that are strangling serenity out of me, he thinks they're advantages to getting sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's crazy town around here. I figured that out immediately. And he got me busy in Alcoholics Anonymous immediately. As I was recovering physically from alcoholism, the damage done, as I was recovering emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, physically, he didn't wait for me to get well, and now we're going to get busy in Alcoholics Anonymous immediately. And you know what he did, how he did it? He left me with some dignity. He used the age-old spiritual principle of invitation. He immediately started inviting me into his AA life. You see, I didn't know that when I got my first sponsor, automatically, I got some things that I didn't have to ask for, and he didn't have to tell me I now possessed. It just was so. I had a home group. Didn't know what one was, but I had one. I had a set of meetings I'd be attending with commitments. Didn't know what any of that meant. Found out soon enough. I had a whole host of new friends. You know why? He's a good AA member. He had a lot of friends. And I didn't know this about AA. If I sponsor you, my friends are your friends. You know, your sponsor doesn't just throw his protective cloak over you. Everybody in his circle knows who you are. And everybody's got your back. It's not that it takes a village, it's that this thing works with a village. And so he got me busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. He got me a big book. He got me a 12 and 12. He gave me that meeting directory. And then he insulted me, which is what all good sponsors should do with new sponsees, because you got to get off on the right foot. Look, it's impossible not to insult a new person. It's when I knew you insult me just by asking me, "How you doing tonight, Don?" Kind of a personal question, don't you think, Ralphie? You know? Because we're sensitive. We're unnaturally sensitive. So he insults me. He goes, "Do you think you can go home tonight and not drink?" Oh, it's just rude, isn't it? I mean, I'm coming up on 48 hours of sobriety, and it offended me, and I let him know by saying, "Listen, buddy, any jerk can go a day without drinking." And he lit up like Christmas. He said, "Oh, you're going to be perfect for our program." And so it began. I get in my sister's car that night with all this literature, and she goes, "Oh my God." I go, "I know, I think I got homework. I don't even know what's happened." I go from being drunk on the couch to I'm active in AA. Second night. I'm back at the Simi Valley Alano Club at 5:30. That's all I remembered him saying. "Be back here at 5:30. You know, I didn't know the meeting didn't start till 6, but he wanted me there early. He wanted me to get introduced to some people. Then we went to the 6 o'clock meeting. It ended at 7:30. I said, now what do we do? He goes, we wait for the 8 o'clock meeting. I didn't know that not everybody went to 2 meetings a night. That's just what we were doing. In fact, I was so damaged that, people would talk to me. I was a guy when I was new, my first 30, 40 days, I could keep it together for 10, 15 seconds. You know what I mean? I could impersonate a human being for 10 or 15 seconds. And then the weird stuff would just come out. You ever look at clouds and think there's spaceships behind them? You ever do that? The weird stuff would come out. And you know what they tell you in AA? They just go, well, kids, some are sicker than others. I was 6 months sober before I figured out that ain't a compliment. Because I used to be proud of it, that's right, and I'm one of them, because all I got is my drunk-a-log. So I'm showing up early, and then we're going to 2 meetings a night. And I'm 3 months sober before I went to my sponsor, and I said, I've noticed, because there's an injustice to that, when you notice that the other new people aren't being asked to do everything that you're being asked to do. And it should be corrected, and I just want to bring it to his attention, and I let him know I've noticed that not all the new people are being asked to do everything you're asking me to do. Would you care to explain why that is? And he didn't even look up from the newspaper he's reading. He goes, well, you're sicker than them. And I said, that's true. And I just walked away. I had nothing to come back at. Because you see, AA saving my life from the very beginning because I got real alcoholism. I'm not a guy that comes here and goes, oh, I'm home. You see, something happens to me every time I stop drinking. And I'll keep it brief. I go insane in my own mind. There's no other way to explain what happens to me. You separate me from alcohol, and very quickly I become irritable, restless, and discontent. The greatest understatement in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because it sounds clinical. It doesn't sound bad, does it? Irritable, restless, and discontent. But that's not how it feels, does it? I'm irritable. I want to hurt you. Now. I'm restless. I think I'll go over there. Nope, don't like them. Maybe I'll go over there. Nope, they don't like me. Maybe I'll get some ice cream. God, I'm getting fat. It just doesn't matter what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, who I'm doing it with. Doing the wrong thing at the wrong place with the wrong people. There's no peace. And I'm discontent. You separate me from alcohol, I'm discontent. Whiskey doesn't kill alcoholics. Discontentment does. Right? What does it say? Very bottom of A Vision for You. First page of A Vision for You. Very bottom of the page starts off. An alcoholic being dry at the moment says, don't miss it at all. Feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we laugh at such a sally. We know our man is fooling himself. He's like a scared little boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He would do anything to take a half a dozen drinks and get away with it. No, he will try the old game again because he's presently not happy with his sobriety. See, everybody's got a saturation point, and when we stop drinking, man, that untreated alcoholism starts choking us out, and the clock is ticking. And at some point, I'm just going to ask myself, I'm going to say to myself, if this is sobriety, what's the point? Yeah, I know drinking's going to cost me everything and probably kill me, but it's superior to how I'm feeling in this sober state. So I got to get recovery quick in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got to get relief in recovery quick. And so my sponsor got me moving. He used to say the funniest things. A moving target's harder to hit. I'm a little kid. They teach you those parables. They teach you those little cliches, and you don't understand what they mean until you get sober. Like idle hands are the devil's playthings. You don't understand that until you get some free time on your hands and go crazy when you're newly sober. And I love being in 2 meetings a night because it kept me busy. It kept me going. And why I'm doing this, there's things happening in my life without my permission. I don't understand that I'm in class. I heard somebody say this in AA from a podium recently, and it sounded good. I just disagree with it. He said, we do not teach in Alcoholics Anonymous. We share experience, strength, and hope. I was like, man, that sounds cool. Not my experience. You taught me everything. You know why you needed to teach me everything? Because I didn't know nothing. And when you don't know nothing, you better hope to sweet God somebody loves you enough to take an interest in you and start to teach you things. Because around Alcoholics Anonymous, as Marilyn pointed out, it's dog rules, right? I'm a street guy. I'm untrained. I'm not housebroken. And I come into your AA meetings with all that garbage, and I don't know how to act. And I had a sponsor that cared enough about me that why he was taking me through the steps, why he was teaching me about the service structure, why we were doing those things, he taught me how to be an AA member because it's dog rules around here. And it seemed for the first 3 months I was in AA, that, look, apparently there's a whole set of rules in Alcoholics Anonymous that aren't written down anywhere. They're in no conference-approved literature. And they seem to have been handed down from old-timer to old-timer over the generations. Because I would go to meetings and my sponsor would see me after the meeting, give me that crooked finger, say, come here, Don, and I'd think, now what did I do wrong? And he would explain to me what I had done wrong at the meeting that night. Don, if you're bored, you can't go in the corner and do push-ups. Don, you can't get up and get coffee 6 times during the meeting to disturb everybody. Don, if you don't like what an old-timer says to you, you can't threaten to snatch the life out of him and make amends later. I did not know. Because it's dog rules in Alcoholics Anonymous. You better hope that somebody cares enough about you to teach you the rules. Man, listen, I got a dog. I got a dog at home. Bo the Wonder Dog. Remarkable dog. If you spent 5 minutes with my dog, you turn to me and go, that's a remarkable dog you have there, Don. I go, thank you. He's just a really good boy, right? But Bo, like any puppy you can think of at one time, or any dog you can think of at one time was a puppy. And when we first got Bo, I remember I'm on the phone with a sponsee and looking straight ahead, and Bo came into my vision in the living room. And we'd only had him a couple of weeks, little fella. I remember thinking, there's Bo. God, I love him. Look at that cute little guy. And then he went into a crouch, right? And I went, and in the phone, I went, oh no. And my sponsee goes, what is it? I go, Bo's taking a dump in the living room. And he goes, do you have to go? I go, no, it's too late. You can't interrupt him, man. You'll traumatize the little guy. That's not how you potty train a dog. You got to kind of keep an eye on him. You got to kind of stalk him a little bit. And when he looks like he's about to break bad, you got to pick him up, right? It will freak him out a little bit because he'll be like, I'm in the air, I'm in the air, I'm in the air, And you rush him outside, man, and you drop him on the lawn, and he'll look at you completely confused, like, what the hell was that about? And you're just staring at him, and he realizes he's outside. Well, I did kind of have to poop, and so he'll go poop. And if he does, you better throw a party. Hooray, Bo! Who's a good boy? You're such a good boy. And he'll get all excited. He'll go, oh, my God, I didn't know. You want me to poop out here? Oh, I could totally do that. I love you. They did exactly the same thing with me in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we do that with our friends, our new friends. And maybe you'll have the experience I'll have. You'll show up at your home group one night, and you'll look into the kitchen, and there's Jimmy, and you'll think to yourself, Jimmy's 2 weeks sober. Jimmy came crawling out of the bushes speaking in tongues. We didn't know if Jimmy was going to make it, and Jimmy's making the coffee tonight. It's a goddamn miracle. Jimmy's making it. I'm not drinking the coffee, but Jimmy's making the coffee. And you look over in the corner, and there's Mary sitting out the literature. Mary's got 30 days sober. Mary, for 30 straight days, cried during the entire meeting. It got so bad, old-timers would just walk by her with a box of Kleenex and drop it. And now Mary's setting the literature up, and she's not just setting the literature up, she's setting the literature up perfect. You know what I mean? All right angles, everything, alphabetized pamphlets, and she's proud. She's on duty. Get your literature. I'm right here. What do you need? And she's smiling, and she's not crying, and your heart fills up. And maybe you'll see the most beautiful thing in the world that I've seen 100 times. You'll see one of our new friends at the door, and they're cordially welcoming a man or a woman who's still suffering from a beautiful program called Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, my name is Don. I don't think we've met. Why don't you come in, let me get you a cup of coffee and introduce you to some of my friends. And you realize the chain remains unbroken. And it all comes from good sponsorship. You see, I can't stand here and take credit for the good life that I have today. I owe it all to Alcoholics Anonymous and strong sponsorship and a man that wanted more for me than I wanted for myself. Because you see, I wasn't going to do any of it. Because you see, I've got a sponsor who was kind of like a Yoda ninja. You know what I mean? He was really soft-spoken and really kind, but every now and then he would just slide the blade in. You know what I mean? You just wouldn't even see it coming. And I remember one day, this is the kind of guy he was. We sat down to discuss my future employment, and I said I didn't have to work. And he said, why is that? And I said, I'm collecting unemployment from the state of California. That was a mistake. If you want to piss your sponsor off, have a sponsor that swings a hammer for 50 hours a week and tell him you don't have to work, you're collecting unemployment. I'd never seen him mad before. You know what I mean? His eyes got real red. And you ever seen somebody angry and they know what they're about to say is inappropriate and they start to say it and then they catch themselves? Like, listen, Don, the point is, Don, the thing we learned in AA, and finally he stammered out, is there any reason other than sheer laziness you can't work? And I thought about it and went, no. And I had a big business background, and he said no. He said no. He said no the same way every time. He always say it in threes. No, no, no. Because I wanted to go back in the business world, and he goes, nah, you'll make the big money and your ego won't be smashed. You won't get a foundation in AA, and then you'll drink and you die, and it won't matter anyway. No, Don, for you, we need something humbling. And he said, I see here you've never worked with your hands. And I go, nope, barely know which end to hold a hammer. And he said, fascinating. And the next day he came in and he got me a job as a laborer on a framing crew. And I'd love to tell you at that point I discovered my true calling was to work with my hands, and that would be a lie. I was horrible at that job. I sucked at that job. I had a nickname at that job, the Bleeder. And so now I go to 2 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous every night. I go to work and I bleed all day, and then I rinse and repeat, and that's my life. And there's trouble at home. I'm getting sober in my family's house, and there's so much damage. And they're encouraging, and they're glad that I'm getting sober, but there's so much wrong that I don't know how I'm ever going to make it right. And my sister, who's one of my best friends in the world, and I just love her so much, we could talk for very brief periods of time, but we couldn't look each other in the eye. And there was this great uncomfortability between us. So I was talking to my sponsor about it as the months went on. And I remember being about 3 months sober, my sponsor came up to me one day and he said, listen, what are you doing to say thank you to your family, for them letting you get sober in their house? And I said, well, I'm not drinking. He goes, that's mighty big of you. He goes, go home tonight and ask your sister if there's anything you can do to say thank you. It sounded simple enough, so I went home that night. And I went to my sister Patricia. I said, so my sponsor wants to know if there's anything I can do to say thank you for you letting me get sober here. And she didn't miss a beat. She said, well, you can paint my house. And I said, your whole house? And she said, yeah. And I went, I got to talk to my sponsor first. And I went back to my sponsor and I said, this crazy woman wants me to paint her 2-story, 3,800 square foot house. And he goes, is she buying the paint? I go, I assume. He goes, you got off easy, paint her house. And then he walked away dismissively. And that's how he ended conversations. He would just say something, and then he'd walk away, and I see his bald head going off in the distance. And this one particular time, I yelled at his bald head as he went away. I said, hey, I thought this program was suggested. That was a mistake. I'd never seen him move like that. You know what I mean? He's like back in my personal space, looking up at me. I'm looking down on him. He's wagging that finger. He goes, Don, you're so sick that everything I say from this point forward, I want you to assume it's a direction. And we'll let you know when you've passed into the suggestion phase of the program. Now I'm painting her house. And I'm bitter about it, but I'll tell you what, man, the genius of sponsorship and the genius of action. See, my sponsor was a student of the Big Book. So he knew about the amends process. And he knew about that line that said, our man will be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than our talk of spiritual discoveries. Because I'm the guy that wants to say, hey, I came to AA. Sorry I slept with your girl, stole your money, wrecked your car, but I got God now. We're cool, right? And my sponsor said, no, that's not how we made amends. So without even being on the 9th step, when people tell you everything has to be done perfect in AA or you'll die, I'm not even close to the 9th step at this point. I'm painting her house. And I can't tell you what it did for her. She said it caused a great healing, but I'll tell you what it did for me. The deeper I got into that project was the exact equivalent of how much extra time I could be in the same room at the same time with my sister and be comfortable. And when I got done with that, we weren't even Stephen. There was a long period of reconstruction ahead, as the book says. But I could be in the same room at the same time, breathing the same air, looking my sister right in the eyes. And Alcoholics Anonymous gave me back one of the most important people in my life early in my sobriety, and I saw the power of this thing. I saw it start to heal my family, a family that had never been to Al-Anon, never been to AA, never read AA literature, never read Al-Anon literature. I watched the hand of God reach into me and then be carried into my family's home. And I watched my family start to be healed by the power that's in Alcoholics Anonymous, by nothing more than the example of a man that was broken and defeated by alcoholism come to a magic place called Alcoholics Anonymous, take a few simple actions, and start to give my family back the last thing my disease tore from them, hope. Only it was real hope this time. And I began to understand that my sponsor wasn't the enemy. I didn't like what he was having me do, those sneak attacks. Hey, I understand you're not working tomorrow. No, that's right. Good, we're going to court. And I'd say something cute like, well, who are we going for? And he goes, going for? We're going for you. And they say the perfect newcomer response. Why? They don't even know where I'm at. And we showed up in courtrooms because my sponsor had me show up in courtrooms. And I got a driver's license because I showed up in courtrooms. And I cleaned up the wreckage because I worked at the Salvation Army, an ungodly amount of community service. I did so much service at so much community service at the Salvation Army that when I was done, they threw me a party. And my life's getting better, and these things are being added to my life, and I'm starting to think that maybe I can stay sober. And it's all because of sponsor direction, because I'm not planning any of this. I don't want to do none of it. And the thing about AA, man, it kills us in the big book what our propulsion system is for active alcoholism, right? Or untreated alcoholism. It says we're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, and self-pity. Any one of those things can kill us. You put them together, we're as good as dead. And in AA, one thing they won't tolerate is self-pity. That's a problem for me. It's one of my favorite things. If I can't feel good, man, let me feel bad. I love to feel sorry for myself. I love to play the victim. I love that. Not in AA. They just won't let you do it. The worse it is, the more they'll be happy about it. The more they'll laugh at you. They'll laugh at you till you can laugh at yourself. You'll leave AA with resentments and you'll go home and get the joke. I remember my sponsor found out I owed the IRS $80,000. And I was, man, you got $500,000 in the bank, that's a sting. But when you're working for minimum wage and you owe the state you don't know what, and you owe the feds 80 and you haven't worked in a year, it's never going to be okay. And my sponsor said, well, that's a lot of money. And I got to admit, it'll take some time to take care of that. But, people come into AA with worse problems than that. You'll be all right, kid. And he just really didn't get into it. But what he did do is he put it into service in Alcoholics Anonymous immediately, right? Immediately. For the next year and a half, if any newcomer had the audacity to complain about his little $1,500 IRS debt, my sponsor would go, hold that thought, Jimmy. Hey, Don, you got a minute? I'd walk over and he'd go, Don, tell Jimmy how much you owe the IRS. And I'd look at Jimmy, I'd go, I owe the IRS $80,000. And Jimmy would say, Jesus, and I go, just want to be of service. I started sponsoring people at 6 months sober. I didn't want to do that either. But you see, what I didn't know is I had been hanging out with the masters, man. They were taking me on 12-step calls, these old-timers. And they gave me the rules. You can come with us. You just can't say anything. You just watch. And I'd sit in the hump in the back of the car. And we'd go in these tough neighborhoods, man. And I'd know these neighborhoods. And I'd think, man, do you know where we're going? Because I know where we're going. But these men didn't care, man. They were like God's soldiers holding their big books, walking into these places. They'd go to the most sordid place on earth, and they knew God would keep them protected. And I watched the miraculous things happen. I watched the hand of AA reach into the abyss. I watched the hand of AA grab a still-suffering alcoholic anonymous, or new alcoholic. I'd watch people try AA, and I'd watch people get better. So at 6 months sober, man, I'm off the leash, and I'm going on 12-step calls without my sponsor. And I went on this one with a guy with 6 months and another guy with 14 years, and we're there, man, and there's Donnie M. And Donnie M's sitting there, and he's drinking Jack Daniels. He called Alcoholics Anonymous to see what we could do for him. And so we sat down. The first thing Donnie said is, don't try to take my Jack Daniels. And we said, Donnie, we don't do that. And besides, brother, you called us. And we started doing what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the other guy with 6 months hit him with his 6-month stuff, which was great. And then the guy with 14 years hit him with his 14-year stuff, which was amazing. And then I hit him with my 6-month stuff, which was kind of like, I haven't drank in like 6 months. I live at my sister's house. Don't have a car. Work for minimum wage. I can't really say I'm happy most of the time. I have a tyrannical figure in my life I call a sponsor. I'm very sure I don't like him. I don't know if you want what I have. And we leave, and Donnie's still drinking, and I'd already been taught if you leave sober, it's a successful 12-step call. And I get off of that job that I bleed at every day, and the phone rings at my sister's house, and it's Donnie. I couldn't believe it. And he goes, "Hey, man, where's that meeting tonight?" And I couldn't believe it. He's drunk the night before. He's calling for directions to the meeting. So I tell Donnie where the meeting is, and I go, "Do we need to come pick you up?" And he goes, "No, man, I got a car." And I think, God, he's doing better than I am. And so I got to rush down to Alcoholics Anonymous to beat the newcomer down there and cordially welcome him, which I do. And then he goes, "You know, that stuff you said about sponsorship makes sense. Would you sponsor me?" I said, "I'll get right back to you." And I ran across the clubhouse and I found my sponsor, and I go, "You know that 12-step call?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "He's here tonight." He goes, "Oh my God, that's beautiful." And I go, "Yeah, he asked me to sponsor him." He goes, "Oh, that's great. What'd you say?" I said I'd get back to him. He goes, "Let me get this straight. He was drinking last night?" "Yeah." "And somehow he made it to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous?" "Uh-huh." "And he took whatever strength he had left and asked you for help?" "Uh-huh." "And you said you'd get back to him?" "Yeah." "Go say yes, you selfish bastard." And then he walked away dismissively again. And I yelled at the back of his bald head, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to kill him." He doesn't even turn around. He goes, "You got to kill a couple before you get the hang of it." And I'm like, my God. AA, we care. No, we don't. No, we don't. And I start sponsoring Donnie, man, and I'll tell you what, Donnie has exactly 6 months less sobriety than I do. And I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. His life is not perfect, but he loves being sober. And he's grateful for being sober. And that has nothing to do with me. That has to do with Donnie taking the actions and there being no mistakes in God's world. And I believe in this thing called sponsorship so strongly because every good thing in my life is a direct result of sponsorship. I have a 23-year beautiful sober marriage under my belt to wonderful Eileen. But I'll tell you what, man, when I met Eileen, I fell madly in love with her. And about 2 months after I started dating her, I called up my sponsor and said, "I'd like to come talk to you about my relationship." Because sponsors love those words. "Oh, good, you want to come over and talk about your relationship? I'll start loading my pistol." "You talk, go ahead." And then what did she say? And so I go over and he goes, "What's the problem?" I go, "Nothing, she's perfect." And he goes, "Well, why do you want to break up with her?" And I go, "Can't take it, can't take the pressure." I said, "I'm madly in love with her, man. I feel like I love her more than she loves me. And if she doesn't love me as much as I love her, then it won't work out and I'll go crazy. I'll have to go get hysterical. I can't do it. I just can't do this." He goes, "Calm down, take a breath." And I go, "Look, man, I like it when they're into me, not when I'm into them. This is not going to work out." And he called me a bad name and he said, "You cannot break up with your girlfriend based on that fear." And I said, "I am 33 years old. You cannot tell me I can't break up with my girlfriend." And he said, "Well, I just did," and walked away dismissively. Last June, we celebrated 23 years of marriage, and I got to tell you, I'd have missed the whole thing if I listened to my head, because when I went over there to tell my sponsor I'm breaking up with her, I'm not kidding around. I'm not looking for him to stop me. I'm looking for approval, because I'm sure that I don't want to do this. 3-4 years sober, I start losing my gratitude about what I do for a living. I'm working construction. There's nothing wrong with that. I just suck at it. And so I'm talking to my sponsor about it, and I go, "Man, I feel like I should be doing something else." And he goes, "Don, you're a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You sponsor people, you go to meetings, you take commitments. God will put something in your path, and your job will be to say yes." And then he stopped talking. I remember thinking, he doesn't have an answer. That's what you say when you don't have an answer. A week later, I get this goofy opportunity to interview at this job, but I'm not going to go interview. It's in an industry I know nothing about. It's sales, straight commission. It's a loser's game. I don't like people. They don't like me. But I've got good training in Alcoholics Anonymous, so I go to my sponsor and I tell him about the job I'm not going to go interview for. He goes, "I want you to go interview." And I said, "Yeah, but I don't want to interview. I don't really like people." And he interrupts me. He goes, "That's the funniest thing, Don. I don't remember asking you what you want." And I know where that goes, right? So I'm just going to make the old boy happy, so I go and I interview, and they hire me on the spot. And I'm pissed off. Most people, they get hired, they're happy, you know. Well, you've got the job. I'm like, damn it, you know. And so I go to my sponsor. I go, now what do we do? He goes, well, you go to work for him. So now I'm working for him, and I suck at this job, man. I'm doing sales, and I can't, I'm in the roofing industry. I can't give a roof away, let alone sell one. And I mean, I'm doing everything but be myself. I'm reading every sales book ever written on my free time. So the problem with that is every day I go to work, I'm a different salesman. So I'm neurotic, you know what I mean? I'm this sales technique, that sales technique, and it's getting worse. And I'm begging my sponsor to let me quit the job. 3 months go by. The company is sliding me $500 a week against commissions I don't have, and after 3 months, I owe him $5,000. And I'm begging him, let me quit, man. We're going in the wrong direction. We need to cut and run. And you know what sponsors do? Well, what do they say? Well, they say they're happy with my efforts. Nobody sells at first. Well, you get to quit when they stop inviting you back. I hate my sponsor. And it's getting worse, man. And I'll tell you, I hit the wall this one particular appointment. I've been reading this book, and there was this little chapter in a thing called instant identification. It says when you meet somebody, you got 30 seconds to find something to identify with them about. Look for clues, man. They got a fish in the wall. What a coincidence. I'm a fisherman. They got pets. God, I love animals. You know, they got a beautiful garden. I love gardening. Find some instant identification. You got 30 seconds to do it. So I meet this woman. I go up. I measure her roof. I come down. We're having this great conversation. I'm looking for instant identification. There's got to be something, and I can't find anything. And then I see it. It's perfect. And I say this. I go, so how far along are you? And everything was going great. And her whole face changed. And she says, what do you mean? Anybody with half a brain drops the shovel and quits drinking, right? Or quits digging, right? But I'm an alcoholic, man. I just dig harder like, well, you're pregnant, aren't you? She says, no. And my brain's screaming, drop the shovel, drop the shovel. Did you have a kid recently? 2 years ago. I say thank you for the opportunity to earn your business, and I go back to my vehicle with my tail between my legs, and I'm banging my head on the steering wheel going, stupid, stupid, stupid. I'm literally crying. I'm so defeated. I'm crying, and I call my sponsor, and my sponsor answers the phone, and I tell him what happened, and now he's crying because he can't stop laughing. And through his laughter, he makes me promise not to tell anybody the story at the meeting that night until he's there. Because he doesn't want to miss the looks on their faces. Long story short, by the time I had worked a year in that industry, the ship righted itself. I started to make some real money. I started to be able to make some real amends. I remember making the amends to the IRS, sending them $100 a month, starting off that way. Remember the first check, thinking, oh good, $79,900 to go. And I start being able to send them some chunks when I start making some more money. I don't have any more money, you know, I just got more money to make amends. So things are going good in that regard. And 1 month I had a great month in business. Eileen and I were saving for a wedding, saving for a house, making all our amends, and at the end there was a surplus. And it wasn't a lot of money, you know, by, you know, maybe other people's standards, but if you've been living paycheck to paycheck and making amends, it was a fortune. It was like $3,000. And I didn't know what I was going to buy first. And I remember going to Eileen, I go, well, I have $3,000 extra dollars. I can't believe it. I don't know what I'm going to do. And Eileen doesn't miss a beat. She goes, well, you know, you should probably send it to the IRS. And I said, 5 minutes. You can't let me be happy for 5 minutes. So I call my sponsor up to tell on my wife, and my sponsor says, well, I'm not going to tell you you got to send it to the IRS. I'm just going to tell you you probably should. So now he's an idiot. And I remember sending that check to the IRS, asking my sponsor, when will I feel better? And he said, I don't know, Don, someday. And I remember when I called the IRS, we were in escrow for our first house, and I called them up to see what I owed them. And they said, it's a funny thing, Mr. Landis. There's been a mistake. You've actually overpaid. We owe you $400. Would you like us to send you a check? And if you've given them every cent you have for the previous 5 years, your answer sounds a little like this: you bet your ass. And I called up my sponsor. I said, remember when you told me I'd feel better about this one day? And he said, yeah. I go, today's the day. And so sponsorship has been important in every area of my life, and more importantly, sponsoring men. And I'll tell you, this is the best story I can tell you about sponsoring men. When I was 10 years sober, I got very sick. I was sick for a year. Not for a month, not for 6 months, for a year. I felt bad for a year. And this one particular day, they tried a new medication on me, and all hell broke loose, and I was at the depths of self-pity, laying in the fetal position in the worst pain I've ever been in my life, being so hot, sweat was exploding from my body, and then I'd be so cold, I'd be wrapped in a parka. And in this moment of self-pity and feeling deserted by God, my phone rang, and I looked, and it was a guy I sponsored. And I thought, not now. But I got good training in AA, so I picked up the call. And he said, how you feeling, Spons? Because everybody knew I was sick. And usually I lied. Usually. But this day I let it fly. I said, how am I feeling? Let me tell you how I'm feeling. I go, I'm the worst pain I've ever been in my life, and I feel like God's deserted me, and I'm hopeless, and I feel so sorry for myself. The self-pity's dripping down the walls, and I hate living in self-pity. And I feel like I'm going to die, and you know what? I don't want to die, because I didn't come sober and do all the things I've done in AA to die at this young an age, and my wife's getting tired of being married to a sick guy. You want to know how I feel? That's how I feel. Dead quiet. Because God spots. I'm so sorry to hear that. Listen. I met this girl. And that's why we sponsor other alcoholics. Because they just don't care. 2004, Eileen and I moved to the Pacific Northwest. Wanted to live somewhere beautiful. We ended up in Bellingham, Washington, 20 miles from the Canadian border. We got wildlife. We've got 150-foot trees. It's absolutely beautiful there, and we love living there. We're city kids. We're concrete, steel, and glass from LA, man, and it was a culture shock. I mean, it's different at night. It's darkety dark at night. You know what I mean? First time I left something in the car, didn't have the porch light on, didn't have a flashlight, got halfway to the car, and a little voice in my head said, cougar. And I just jumped in the air and ran in the house. So there was a little bit of a culture shock there. And first summer, man, the mama deers are showing up in our back ears with the spotted fawns. We're losing our mind. We got baby deer. It's just like, oh, because we're city kids. And we fell in love with this one little boy deer, man. And he had this big scar across his face. And I made up a story about him defending his mom's honor. And we're city kids, so we're naming him. It's Mama Deer and Scratch, you know. And then rutting season comes in the fall, and the deer start putting on their winter coats and taking off their summer coats, but not Scratch. Scratch starts looking kind of, I don't know, ugly and patchy, and he's losing big patches of fur, and I mentioned it to Eileen how rough he looks, and she goes, yeah. And she's that girl, man. She gets on the internet and starts researching it and finds out that it's an actual affliction they have in their first year called deer hair loss syndrome. And if they lose enough of their fur, winter will come, and they'll get hypothermic, and they won't eat enough to keep their furnace going, and they'll die. And I said to Eileen, I go, Scratch is going to die? And she said, yeah. And I went, oh, not on our watch. And we started to break every wildlife management law in the state of Washington. Eileen is setting up supplemental feeding stations in our backyard. And when you're trying to feed the one sick deer, you can't feed the one sick deer. So now we got 20 deer coming from all over, you know, in our backyard, and they're pushing the little babies out of the way. And I mean, we got 150-pound bucks with full racks in our backyard. And there's Eileen, 5'3", 100 and nothing. She's chasing off 150-pound bucks. You're selfish, you're self-centered, let the sick one eat, you know. Where am I? I'm on the deck going, be careful, be careful. And it's not working, man. It's not working. Winter comes, and he's losing all the fur in his body, man. And I call Eileen from work, obsessed with this baby deer. And I go, how's Scratch today? And she'd go, he doesn't look good. And I'd shake my fist at God, go, not this one, God. You don't get this one. And now it's the dead of winter, and this poor little guy, man, he's lost all the fur in his body, except a 2-inch wide, 2-inch high swatch of fur from the nape of his neck to his rump. But we've overfed him, right? So now he's rounded out like a beer keg, and he's just this grotesque, ugly, newcomer, mohawk deer standing in my backyard, you know, just eating and pooping, and we're obsessed with this deer. And we make it to spring, and Scratch doesn't die. And for the next 3 or 4 years, every rutting season in the fall where the boys come down from the high country, he'd make an appearance in our backyard, this magnificent buck. And we knew it was him because of the scar, and full rack, just gorgeous animal. He'd walk right up to Eileen, and Eileen could feed him apples by hand. And I'd watch that, and I'd think to myself, what is it about that damn deer that made me lose my mind? And then it hit me. I'm that damn deer. I'm that guy in the Simi Valley Alano Club with my back against the wall. Anybody with a glancing familiarity with alcoholism would have taken one look at me and said, that guy there, he's going to die. And 2 good members of Alcoholics Anonymous saw the same thing and said, not on our watch. And they did the things that we do in AA, and they gave me that spiritual first aid. And I know this, Bill and Bob are gone. And I know it's our watch now. And while we've been in here this weekend and these days at Stateline having a wonderful time, we're going to return to our respective cities and our respective home groups. And they are out there on the streets, and they are dying. And more important than that, they are coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And they don't even know it yet, but they are coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they are going to show up, that conveyor belt of misery that's built right to the front door of AA. They will show up in our respective home groups, and the questions we have to ask ourselves as good AA members is, where will we be? And more importantly, how will we be? Am I going to be at my home group cutting it up with my friends, talking about fantasy football, the next trip I'm going to take, the things we're doing at the house? Or am I going to be like Lou and Mark? Eyes trained on the room, eyes trained on the door, remembering that we're in the saving lives business. You know, it's just another Monday night for me, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. It's just another night for me in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it could be the most important night of somebody else's life. Do I go to AA, and when I shut down the rig, do I say that prayer? God, I got the world hanging all over me. I got money problems and sex problems and things I think about and things I'm worried about. But I'm at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and none of that happened. None of that matters, God. Give me eyes to see. Give me a heart to feel. Let me remember this could be the most important night of somebody's life. Let me be on duty. Let me do what was done for me. And then and only then am I ready to walk into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you to remember this as I finish. They're coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. They're coming looking for us. I hope we're ready. Thank you.